What's up, everybody? This is the Sports League Podcast, back for another week. I'm your host, Alex League. We got the co-host, Amanda, back on the show as always. Amanda, another great week of football.
Yeah, it was an interesting week. I mean, my pick percentage took a 1% hit on the season. I finished above 500, but barely. But there was some interesting mix-ups and some huge storylines this week.
Yeah, a wild week, and this is my favorite time of year. Now that we're in December, I think the reason you're seeing a lot of this too is because you got desperate teams, and they're feeling the pressure. Now's the time to make your move and get into the playoffs. And you need to be playing your best football right now. And it's a lot of fun to see how it's going to come down to the wire.
Yeah, we definitely saw a lot of those teams, scrapping for a win against an opponent that should have beat them, and a lot of those opponents that should have won, feeling the pressure and kind of letting it get to them and losing a game they absolutely should have won. So very interesting stuff this week for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's get started with Thursday night was the Patriots Steelers game, and the Patriots got their third win of the season. And some news is kind of coming out saying that the Patriots have already made their decision that they're going to move on from Bill Belichick after the season. I'm not really surprised by that, with their record being 3-10 and having a really tough year and no quarterback, right? Mac Jones isn't the guy. Bailey Zappi clearly isn't. Are you surprised by this at all?
Um, Not really. I mean, the rumors I'm seeing say that this decision was kind of made after week 10 when they lost to the Colts.
Yeah.
So, regardless of their wins recently, it kind of seems like it might be time to part ways. I mean, he ran a dynasty there, obviously. I mean, Tom Brady and him were an unstoppable force. And sometimes it's just time to move on and just kind of start building the future. And they're definitely in a rebuild phase right now.
Yep.
So, new coach, new quarterback, new everything. It doesn't seem like bad timing. I just hope it isn't being held against him that he has no one to work with right now. Like, I hope it's not because of animosity and there's not, storylines that come out that, make the situation shine bad light on either Bill or the organization, because I don't think it's either partner's fault there.
Yeah, I agree. And sometimes, like you said, sometimes change is needed. You can be a hell of a coach, and he's been there for how long? 20 plus years. So at some point, change is needed, a new fresh voice, a new regime. And we'll see. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Belichick going forward. Does he coach another team? Does he go, into analyst mode and become media, or what does he do? But I mean, you could plug Bill Belichick into a few teams that would be very interesting, if he still wants to coach. I mean, think about him with the Chargers, with how much talent they have on the defense and a franchise quarterback in Justin Herbert. There's a lot of different options.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's so many narratives about how much input Tom Brady had on, draft selection and play calling and play design. So it's interesting to see how Belichick has done since, Tom Brady has left. I mean, they're over the past four seasons, they're 28 and 35. And he's made some picks in the draft that people have very much doubted. And it's probably time to move on, but I wonder how that plays out. Like, is he really off his game these past few years, or is it because the organization doesn't have the talent that he's used to working with? So I think you make a good point about, him stepping into a place that needs a better coach, but already has the talent there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you put him on the Chargers and they are instant contenders almost. You think about Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, Justin Herbert, and then we talk about how much talent is on that defense. So I don't know. It will be interesting. And what do the Patriots do? Do they hire someone? Mike Vrabel might be available. Do they go with him, former Patriot player? Do they hire Josh McDaniels after all the drama we've seen with him and his history with New England? So it's going to be interesting for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a storyline we're keeping tabs on. So whenever we hear anything, guys, we'll break it and let you know, and try to keep the opinionated narratives out of it and just kind of share the facts that we know when that news becomes available.
Absolutely. We're not narrative pushers. We just talk the game, and we'll let you know. Also keep an eye on the Hugh Jackson interview coming out. Should be coming out Thursday, so that'll be a lot of fun. And we might be breaking some news with that one. We'll see. Um, let's get into Week 14 recap. Sunday football. Let's talk about Bucks Falcons battle for first place in the NFC South. The Falcons trying to sweep Tampa Bay, but we both like Baker Mayfield. We felt like, he's kept Tampa Bay alive in this playoff race all season long. What did you think about this game?
So, I wanted the Bucks to win. And I just, not that I'm down on Baker Mayfield, but they've just been kind of in a tough stretch. So I was thinking maybe the Falcons would pull this off. The Falcons like to play Tampa Bay pretty scrappy, and I don't trust Desmond Ridder, but just looking at both teams the past couple weeks, not that I'm losing faith in the Buccaneers. They just seem like they might have another off week. But
Mm-hmm.
as we've seen all season, and we've made a huge point of this, the Falcons have been struggling in the red zone. So, I mean, of course, this is how they, lost the game. And they were holding on to the NFC South going into this game. So, having the chance to score the game-winning touchdown, Desmond Ridder has the ball, 31-yard line, final play of the game. He was tackled on the 3-yard line to end the game. That's exactly what we would expect from a team who has had red zone issues all season.
Yeah, and valiant effort, but you're at home. It's a chance to take a 2-game lead in the division, and you can't get it done. And this is why we've been kind of picking against the Falcons all year long and not trusting Desmond Ridder or, Taylor Heinicke or whoever it is. But credit to Baker Mayfield. The Falcons were up 25-22 with 3 minutes to go, and clutch Baker Mayfield leads them down for a game-winning touchdown. I've never really questioned Baker Mayfield. What we've questioned is that defense.
Mm-hmm.
And the defense stepped up. Carlton Davis with an interception, Antoine Winfield Jr. with a forced fumble that results in a safety. So they stepped up as a team in the biggest game of the year so far. This would have put them down 2 games if they had lost. This is a huge win, and now they pull even in that division. So big shout out to Tampa Bay. That's a huge win on the road, right?
Yeah, it's interesting though, because it's a win and they needed a win, but Baker had a really off game. He and Mike Evans could not connect at all. I mean, Evans
Yeah.
caught one single catch for 8 yards during the game, 5 targets, completely off the mark. I don't know if it was a miscommunication thing or what was going on, but I mean, we saw Baker go 14 for 29 for
Yeah.
144 yards. Like, it is pretty astonishing that they pulled off a win with their quarterback completing less than half of their passes.
Yeah, shout out Rashad White, who goes for 135 combined yards and a touchdown. And the big thing, Baker Mayfield wasn't super accurate and all that, but he threw 3 touchdowns, or 3 touchdowns and no turnovers, especially. Like, turnovers killed Atlanta, turnovers didn't kill Tampa Bay.
Yeah. And I mean, he had that quarterback sneak there, and he was playing really well when it came to, passing the ball out to White and to get the ball moving on the ground. But it was an interesting day between him and Evans, because normally we're used to that connection, showing up with some of the, top 10 plays of the week between the two of them. So interesting off day. I'm glad they got the win, and hopefully they can kind of work on that in the off week. But Rashad White has been really coming together this season. I mean, each week it's, another strong game for him. I mean, as you mentioned, like right now he's got 60 carries for 286 yards and a rushing touchdown over the past 3 games.
Yeah, they
So,
wouldn't be where they're at without Rashad White. He's been absolutely huge. And then to me, it's just a missed opportunity for Atlanta. You could have gone on a 3-game winning streak, taken a 2-game lead, and to lose that, it kind of seems like, tell me if you agree, that loss right there at home is the backbreaker. I mean, I know there's 4 games left, but that was a prime opportunity that you let slip away, and now it's like that could cost you the playoffs right there.
yeah, well, I think their issue right now is that O-line. I mean, they're completely just banged up right now. They started the game without their center, Drew Dahlman, and right tackle, Caleb McGarry were out before the game started. And then,
Mhm.
it was already a challenging area for them. And then Jake Matthews and Chris Lidstrom were injured at various points in the game too. So, four of their five starting O linemen were out of the game for at least part of it. I mean, that's
Yeah.
really tough to recover from. And we know that Ridder has issues already, with taking hits and picks and stuff throughout the season. So that just really didn't set them up for success there. But what's interesting is that Tampa Bay run game. So we've seen a lot of teams go into the half and have issues and come out and have not addressed them at all. But they had a 20% success rate in the first half, and Tampa Bay went into the locker room, worked out whatever they needed to work out. Their second half of the game, 57% success rate on designated runs.
Yeah.
I mean,
There you
that's a
go.
great comeback story right there. And I mean, they pulled off the win, so I'm really happy for them, but it just kind of shows like their mindset was in the absolute right place. I mean, this is their first game this season where they've won a game after allowing more than 20 points. So they're 1-7 in games where their opponent scored more than 20.
Yeah. Love to see it. That's one of those, character building wins, hard fought, grinded out wins. And to be trailing with 3 minutes left and to find a way to win that game, not just tie it, but take the lead and put the pressure on Atlanta, that's how you get it done right there. Now let's go. How about Lions Bears? I pretty much I called this one pretty good, didn't I?
You did. And I mean, to be fair, when they met up earlier this season, you said Justin Fields would outplay Jared Goff, and he did, but the Lions still pulled off a win there. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, going into this game, I knew it would be a scrappy matchup. Those interdivision NFC North matchups are always insane. But man, the Lions did not show up to this game. And I don't want to be, an overreaction kind of person. We've seen a ton of overreactions this week after these games, but the Lions are
Mm-hmm.
allowed a bad game. And this one, man, this was bad. And we've seen them go from having, 3-4 turnovers in a game to no turnovers for 1 week. And this week was back to the turnovers. And pretty bad officiating in this game. Not that it was the reason Chicago won, but it definitely felt like officiating was interfering with the game too much, and I'm getting real sick of that this season.
Yeah, I mean, I just, I'm gonna keep harping on it. I think that the Lions, I don't think it was one bad game. I think they're not playing well. And this is 5 games in a row, in my opinion. Like, because I've been hating on this team all season long, and I've gotten a lot of pushback and a lot of people, people talking about them being Super Bowl contenders, and saying I'm crazy for not believing in this Lions team. I don't. I don't believe in this Lions team. I know they're 9-4 even after this game. I think they're going on a losing streak. It doesn't get any easier from here on out, and I don't believe in this team at all. Um, you know, they've not shown up. They haven't played a complete game, even when they jumped out to a 21-0 lead on the Saints. They allowed the Saints to come back and almost take the lead, and it took a Derek Carr turnover to give them that win pretty much. They let the Bears get out to a big lead. They let the Packers get out to a big lead, and they let the Bears get out to a big lead again. And they even rallied. They were down 10-0. They rally and take a 13-10 halftime lead, and that's when you expect they're the better team. They're going to put the Bears away in the second half. The Lions scored 0 points in the second half. And it's not like the Bears are some elite defense. I know they're playing better of late, but they're not. And once again, I mean, Jared Goff accounted for 3 turnovers. Statistically, they're going to put that fumble on the center, but that's on Goff. And
Yeah, that
those
was absolutely his
turnovers,
fault.
yeah. And on top of that, 3 turnovers from Goff. But I've been saying this all year long. Dan Campbell's aggressive, go for it on 4th down all the time play style
Mhm.
is not sustainable. And
No,
2 more turnovers on down.
turning over on
Yeah,
downs when there is a field goal you could get. Obviously, a field goal wouldn't have won this game for them, but we have seen them throughout the season barely squeak by with a win when, I mean, they have 2, 3, 4 turnovers on downs. Just take the goal attempt. Even if
yeah,
you miss it, there is a potential for points there.
yep.
And yeah, it's a bit too aggressive for the talent they have on the team. I think, if they had Marshawn Lynch, as a running back, someone who could absolutely not be stopped, that'd be one thing. But as much as we like Jahmyr Gibbs and, you know, that offense in Detroit, they're not that efficient and they're not going to pull it off. So we see turnover after downs in every game. And
Hmm.
I mean, on the other side of the ball, I know Fields absolutely outplayed Goff. But he was moving a lot on the ground, which I appreciated. So he ran for 58 yards and, you know, scored a rushing touchdown himself, which was beautiful. But he had an off game too. Some of his throws that missed receivers were like, I could not believe how badly thrown some of those balls were. So Fields was pretty lucky that there weren't turnovers, and this one is on his side. But not a pretty game, but yeah, Detroit did not show up for this one at all.
Yeah, and this is where, to me, this is typical Lions. This is the same old Lions. You get to December and they start being not reliable, and the undisciplined penalties really came back to bite them. Aiden Hutchinson, your best defensive player, jumping off sides on 4th and 13, allowing the Bears a free shot. DJ Moore beats the defender, and it's an easy touchdown. That's a huge play in the game. And then the Bears are up 8. I believe it's 21-13. And Aiden Hutchinson, instead of keeping his end and keeping Fields in the pocket, he decides to come into the middle, trying to get a sack. Fields sees that, goes outside, and it's a wide open lane, and Fields runs for a touchdown. So Aiden Hutchinson, your best defensive player, making mistakes that led to the loss. Where's the leadership of this team? Where's the veteran players that are like, we're reliable. We're not gonna make mistakes. We're gonna lead by example. Where's that at? I'm not seeing it. And I don't blame Dan Campbell for being upset, but you're also turnovers on downs. I mean, look, their final 4 games, they play the Broncos on Saturday. I'm going to go ahead and write that in as a loss. Do you think
Yeah.
they can win that against Denver?
What's funny is those are the two teams that I've, you know, we've kind of been picking to win close matchups, but I'm definitely taking the Broncos there. I don't think they can pull it off. I mean, Detroit. So not only is Goff having issues on offense, both David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs had horribly dropped passes that would have been potentially huge plays for the Detroit offense. Um,
Yeah.
at separate points in the game, I think Jahmyr dropped 2. I saw one really bad one from Montgomery when I was bouncing between games. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, like, where was he? He and Laporta were both completely held in check in this game. But not only that offense having issues, which they've had all season, but their defense has kind of carried them. Since week 7, the Lions are in the bottom 2 in the NFL in points allowed per game and their turnover differential. They've
Yeah.
allowed 355 yards per game and almost 6 yards per play since week 7. I mean,
Yep.
most of those wins in that, 9-4 record are from early in the season, and we have seen them fall apart. And granted, I never thought that the Lions were going to be a postseason team. Did I think they have the best chance to win the division with the way the Packers were playing and currently are playing again, the Bears roster, and then Minnesota's issues since Kirk Cousins went down? Yes. Um,
Yeah.
so, I mean, well, people have called them contenders
It's
and
kind
Super Bowl
of,
contenders and stuff. That sounds crazy to me. Do I think throughout this season that they've had the best chance of winning the division? Yes. I don't think they're going to
yeah.
make it past, a divisional game, but yeah, they've completely fallen off a cliff at this point. So they need to address those issues, and I am not going to have any faith in them until I see them actually stop an opposing team from putting up 20 points again, because that was awful on defense. And I mean, 3-4 turnovers a game, you can't win by doing that, guys. Come on.
Yeah. You're combining bad defense with turnovers. You're asking to get beat. I don't care. Everything about the Lions right now is trending in the wrong direction.
Mhm.
And on paper versus Broncos at Cowboys, I'm going to say that's 2 losses. So then
Yeah.
the other 2 games versus Vikings at Vikings. And guess who has the best chance at catching them? The Vikings. So
Yeah.
those 2 games are going to have magnifying glasses on them. They better win at least one of those. Because if they don't, they could finish the season on a 5-game losing streak.
Well,
So
and
it's,
this NFC North has their number. I mean, Goff
yep.
has 5 interceptions against Chicago this season and 5 total against all other teams combined.
And so we say those stats, and they haven't played the Vikings yet. Who's the best defense in the North?
Yeah.
The Vikings.
No one in Green
So
Bay.
yeah, and it's not Chicago. So those games at Minnesota, and so versus Minnesota, Week 18, that's their best chance to win. If they
Yeah.
lose Broncos at Vikings at Cowboys, they're going to be on a 4-game losing streak going to that home game against the Vikings in Week 18. So Lions fans, buckle up. It's going to be a bumpy ride here towards the end. Maybe they need to beat Denver on Saturday, but neither of us think they're going to.
Yeah, I would love to see Dan Campbell actually make some adjustments for that game because clearly what they've been doing is not working.
Yeah. So, hey, the Lions have never won the NFC North. We'll
Mm,
see if it happens.
yeah. Well, so I mean, speaking of teams who have made some adjustments and had to overcome some stuff. So Indianapolis at Cincinnati. Going into this game, I mean, Jake Browning had a great performance Monday night when he had to step in. Um, a lot of people thought it was, a first game one-off fluke situation. But I mean, after this performance, I mean, 34-14 over the Colts. I mean, how are you feeling about Jake Browning right now?
This game is the most shocking game of the week to me, honestly. Um, because I've been hating on the Colts, and I was excited about the way Jake Browning looked on Monday night against Jacksonville. But still, and I picked Cincy, but all signs were to Indy. And they're coming in on a 4-game winning streak. They had all the confidence in the world. They're playing a backup quarterback, and the Bengals get out to a 14-0 lead, and you're like, okay, here we go. And then a pick six allows the game to be tied just like that. So suddenly it's 14-14 in a hurry going into the half, and you feel like, all right, it was a good start by Cincy, but the Colts are the better team. They're going to pull away in the second half. And the Colts score nothing in the second half, and the Bengals pull away and win easily 34-14. Jake Browning, I mean, dare I say, Jake Browning looks like Joe Burrow out there, right?
Yeah, he has definitely been a great understudy in this situation. And his connection with Jamar Chase, it looked exactly like Joe Burrow. I mean, he was using his running backs more than Joe Burrow has, which is, fair. Absolutely do that. Like when your starting quarterback is out, you should absolutely turn to the run game. But I mean, Jamar Chase, the rookie Chase Brown, he was connecting with really well.
Yeah.
So I'm proud of him in this one. And Joe Mixon is there as the vet to kind of pull off some amazing plays. So yeah, I mean, Mixon finished for 79 yards and a touchdown on 21 carries, 3 passes for 46 yards. So I mean, that offense has so many weapons, and Browning is seemingly developing a great relationship with them. But shout out to that defense in the second half. Because they really, I mean, completely shut the Colts down. Nothing the Colts were doing had any movement at all in the second half.
Yeah, and it's crazy. I was talking with some people yesterday, even, and I was talking about, you remember Gardner Minshew's the backup quarterback. Anthony Richardson went down for the year. Now it's Jake Browning with Joe Burrow down for the year. Next week, the Bengals host the Vikings on Saturday. Another team that's on their backup quarterbacks. I'm going to say right now, the most important position in the NFL might be the backup quarterback. And we might need to adjust the way we build rosters going forward. Maybe this is a fluke year, but I don't think so. I think that the backup quarterback needs to start being valued a lot more.
Oh, absolutely agree. And I mean, we said 3 starting quarterbacks ago, wow, this is the year of the backup quarterback. And since then, I
Yeah.
mean, Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow, we've had so many injuries since then too, and it just continues. Like I'm going to be surprised if the rest of the starting quarterbacks make it through the season. And honestly, this game, Jake Browning left for a little bit. He had a hand injury for a second. I
Yeah.
was like, oh fuck, is he down too? I don't even know who their third string is. Like I had to look it up during the game because I, had forgotten. Luckily, it was just hand cramps, and Jake Brady came back in to finish out the game. But yeah, it's an interesting situation because we have seen so many backup quarterbacks have to step in this season. And I'm intrigued to see. I mean, because right now, Jake Browning is leading this team to the playoffs. If they keep playing, he's been way better than expected in all of his 3 starts for them. So,
Yeah.
if he keeps going, I mean, That's
So
a playoff team right there.
we're gonna have some great football all day Saturday. Three great games on Saturday. It's gonna be like two Sundays in a row, really. Um, one of the games on Saturday, the 7-6 Bengals versus the 7-6 Vikings. How do you feeling about that game? Because both teams desperately need to kind of win out to make the playoffs. Right now, I think most people are saying Bengals. I wonder how Nick Mullins and the Vikings do in that game. That's a tough one.
I mean, it's Nick Mullins, so it was going to be tough regardless of who they played against. But Jake Browning is playing really well right now, so I'm going to roll with the Bengals there.
I think I'm leaning Minnesota. I might be crazy.
I think you might be, but we'll see. Um, Obviously, I'll do a bit more research between now and then. We'll make our official picks in a couple days,
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't know. And something else that's interesting in this game. So the Bengals entered week 14 ranked 27th in rush defense. But the Colts against that 27th ranked run D could only muster 46 yards.
Yeah.
Like, how do you not take advantage of that? Like, the game plan should have been based on, oh, we know they suck against the run. So
Well,
that was insane
everyone
to me. I mean, Zach Moss, I mean, obviously Jonathan Taylor wasn't playing, but Zach Moss should have been doing way more than that.
everyone fell in love with Zach Moss based on a couple performances early in the year and started saying, "Oh, they don't need Jonathan Taylor." But
You need
Jonathan
a
Taylor,
1-2 punch. You have to have a 1-2 punch.
yeah, and he gets hurt. And where's Zach Moss been since then, right? Now's the time for Zach Moss to step up and carry it, and he's not doing it. So I think the Colts are missing Jonathan Taylor even more than we thought.
Well, and obviously, like they know defenses know Jonathan Taylor is out, so they're gonna, double team Zach Moss. But still, I mean, you got to design plays to get him open and to, allow him the opportunity to run the ball. I mean, in this situation, you're playing one of the worst run defenses, and you can't put up more than 50 yards with your best running back. Like that's very disappointing.
Yeah, and I mean, half of that was a pick six, so the offense put up what, 8 points?
Yeah.
So,
Uh,
um, let's go Jags Browns. Trevor
Wait,
Lawrence.
real quick before you do that, I just want to make sure people
Yeah.
hear this stat. Jake Browning has a 79% completion percentage as a starter in his first three career starts, which is the highest completion percentage by any quarterback through their first three starts since 1950.
Jeez.
So when we say he started out good and has been playing beyond what anyone could have expected, we're not joking around. I mean, it's been 73 years since a starting quarterback has come in and played this well in their first three games.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that ends on Saturday versus the Vikings defense. I have a lot of respect for the Vikings defense. The question's gonna be how many points can the Vikings offense score?
Maybe it'll be more than three. So
It's gonna have to be. So we'll see. That might be a low scoring battle.
yeah, another one
Um,
for the Vikings.
yeah. Let's go Jags Browns. And we saw Trevor Lawrence get hurt on what was that, Monday night,
Mhm.
and it was like, man, he's gonna miss multiple weeks, and he somehow guts it out and is able to start this game and keep his consecutive start streak, which is incredible. Where's that at? It's like 47 straight games. He hasn't missed a start since being drafted in 2021.
That is some Brett Favre stuff, and I appreciate and respect that. However,
Yeah.
his lack of mobility in this game, I mean, he was more mobile than we expected after that injury. But
Hmm.
I mean,
Well,
that interception he threw overthrowing Zay Jones, accuracy was a problem all night. He was clearly in pain. I mean, he had three picks in the game, barely completed half of his passes. Like one of the interceptions wasn't technically his fault. There was a Calvin Ridley miscommunication there. But it's really tough to see a starting quarterback come in and play through an injury and clearly, potentially do more damage to the injury and have an off night too.
but on top of that, CJ Beathard was going to look even worse, I think. But that's the thing. It's like, and the Jags are fighting for the playoffs. Like the AFC South is suddenly pretty competitive with the Colts and the Texans. So they're in a tough spot where do you rest Trevor Lawrence and kind of concede the game, or do you try to play him and try to win and still lose, right? And so it's tough. But I'll go ahead and say the Browns are becoming one of my favorite teams. Like I'm rooting for this Browns team because I Joe Flacco, when he went on that run with the Ravens and won the Super Bowl and won Super Bowl MVP, was special. And we know he has that ability in him. And he's old now and he's off the couch and probably not that level anymore. But with the number one defense in football and a good running game with Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt, can Joe Flacco do just enough to where this Browns team could potentially go on a deep playoff run? That could be a lot of fun to talk about in January, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting too because that Super Bowl run was about, Ray Lewis's last year. He announced before
Yeah.
the season, this is my last year. So, I mean, they had that pressure the entire season. Like, let's do it for him. Just like, the Cubs when they won that World Series, David Ross was
Hmm.
retiring at the end of the season. So, do it for Rossi was kind of the slogan. So, having an amazing player on your team who is going to retire and that is a great kind of morale booster, a great motivation. And in this situation, I mean, he has amazing defensive players on that team too. Like he's
Yeah.
got the other side of the ball handled. And I mean, what's funny to me is, I mean, the Browns traded 3 first-round picks, $250 million for Deshaun Watson. All they needed to do was sign Joe Flacco off the couch. I mean, he was watching the game with his mom. Like he was just chilling. I mean, Flacco is Bacco. I hate to say it, man, but I mean, the pun's there. I gotta make the joke. But he I was impressed. And I picked the Browns in this one. Some of our picks this week, I feel like we were just trying to like, I don't know, put some picks on the board a little bit between
Yeah.
us because, I came into this with a 7-game lead. I'm down to 6 now. But like I didn't really want to take Atlanta. I was just trying to like make it interesting. Like obviously I want to root for Baker Mayfield. Detroit, Chicago, you're going to pick Chicago 100%. So I got to stick with my Lions. But, you know, we knew, we even said it was going to be a scrappy matchup. And after their first game, Detroit shouldn't have won that one. Like, I had a feeling Chicago. But like this game, I'm so glad I stuck with the Browns because I would have absolutely not rooted for a single play that the Jags made the whole game because the Browns are just trying to miraculously pull it together with a retired man off the couch. I mean, Trevor Lawrence was outplayed by Joe Flacco. It's 2023. That is a crazy thing to say. I mean, Flacco looked great for most of the game. He was 26 for 45, 311 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. I mean, with the interception, his receiver ran into a defender, so not really holding that against him. But I
Hmm.
mean, he and David Njoku had an insane connection during this game. So they're really fun to watch right now, and I am definitely going to be keeping an eye on the Browns.
Yeah, and there's a recipe to win that way. It's like David Njoku is your go-to. You've got Amari Cooper, who's damn good, and then you've got those two running backs and that elite defense. Just play ball control, protect the football. I know he had 2 turnovers, and that's why this game was close. I mean, 31-27. But if he can tone down the turnovers, especially as we get deeper and deeper into the season, and keep winning, bottom line is find ways to win. I expect this Browns team to make the playoffs, and I expect no one to really want to face. There's a couple wild cards where no one wants to play the Browns. No one's going to want to play the Bills either if they get in. So the playoffs are going to be very interesting. And we'll see if Jacksonville can hang on to the division lead and host a playoff game. They were talking about the number one seed for a while. Now they're lucky that the Colts and the Texans lost because otherwise they'd be tied for the division lead. So they need to hang on to it. Need to get Trevor Lawrence healthy as soon as possible.
Yeah, on that side of the ball, just to, shout out some positive things from them. Evan Ingram, he had a
Yeah,
really tough matchup on defense, but he still, I mean, 11 of 12 of his targets, 95
yeah.
yards, 2 touchdowns. Parker Washington scored, he was 2 for 27, so not quite as impressive in the numbers. But I mean, the Jacksonville receiving core looked pretty good. Calvin Ridley had some issues, or Ridley, yeah. But
Yeah.
it's there are some positive things there and a healthy Trevor Lawrence not dealing with an injury that he's trying to ignore during the game. I think will look better down the stretch. But shout out to him for that Brett Favre performance, like just playing through whatever comes your way, play through a broken arm, play through a dislocated shoulder, play through your dad dying. Like that as a Packers fan, I found that absolutely impressive and respectable. So good for him there.
Yeah, we talk about it's the league of the backup quarterback this year, and Trevor Lawrence still has his consecutive start streak intact. So in today's football, that becomes even more valuable than ever, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, it says a lot for the team, and I think it's a great motivator for the team as a whole. When your quarterback, I mean, that injury looked like he was going to be down for weeks. Like
Yeah,
if he
two to
can fight
three
through
at
that,
least.
you guys can fight through the game, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Who else? Kenny Pickett, the same injury, and he had surgery and is out, multiple weeks. So
yeah, and
that
I
high
know every
ankle.
player is different. Like, so, we're not calling Kenny Pickett a baby or anything for that. I mean, it might have been a slightly different injury or located differently. He might have had prior injuries there. So we're not saying anything bad about Kenny Pickett in this situation, but we know that can be a season ending situation sometimes. So we're just trying to give Trevor Lawrence some kudos there.
The only
But
thing bad I'll say about Kenny Pickett is he has small hands.
oh, little baby hands. I mean, the Browns are the first team in the Super Bowl era with a winning record through week 14, despite being ranked last in turnovers and passer rating.
Yeah, that's going to be something they have to clean up. Passer rating is one thing, but turnovers will kill any team. I did see that they're the worst in the NFL in giveaways.
Yeah, but I
So
mean, Flacco hasn't been in that long, so they do seem to be a bit more competent with him. So
yeah,
we'll see. I mean, he's two starts into it, and I mean, turnovers we can right now maybe chalk up to shaking some of the rust off. But we'll see. I will
yeah,
say that in this game, the um Jags are definitely missing Christian Kirk. Um, he injured his
hmm
groin last week. I mean, that was a really tough game injury wise for them. But since that injury, they're 0-2. Trevor Lawrence isn't, really connecting as well with any of his wideouts. So I think that's a tough situation for them for sure.
And
And go ahead,
you know who the Jags play next?
hit me.
Ver- versus the Ravens on, I believe, Sunday Night Football.
The
So
Ravens haven't been quite as clean and crisp as we'd like to see lately, though. So that could be
that's a tough one,
interesting.
though. Yeah,
Yeah, we'll see. So, the Browns in this matchup, the eighth team since 1950 to have four different starting quarterbacks with at least one win in a season. So, you know,
nice.
interesting to see how both of these teams go moving forward with the, rusty 38-year-old straight off the couch quarterback and the high ankle sprain, but playing through it. So,
Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching both these teams in the playoffs. I'll be rooting for both of them. Um, and yeah, it'll be interesting to get through. Everything is a grind right now. Early December, uh, every week is must-win football, and it's going to be a lot of fun from here on out. Speaking of, we talked about it last week, the Bucks having a get-right game against Carolina, and they barely won 21-18, but they got the win. Once again, a get-right game for a Saints team that is on a 3-game losing streak, and the elixir, the fix it all for a team struggling is to play the Carolina Panthers, right?
yeah, that's the right matchup.
I
Um,
mean, not even close, 28-6.
No, and we both knew it was going to be a Saints win. But I mean, good job for them for overcoming the quarterback injury here. But man, if this was not the perfect opportunity for the Panthers to pull off a win, give Bryce Young a little bit of, street cred. I mean, this is embarrassing at this point to be, on that Carolina squad. Like, awful performance. I mean, that
Yeah,
Saints defense is missing so many players. Like, Marshawn Lattimore is out, but Bryce Young can't complete, like, he barely completed 1/3 of his passes. Awful
yeah,
accuracy throughout the day. Couldn't hit a target, couldn't hit a brick wall. Like, it was pretty bad. He was 13 for 36. That's
yeah,
heinous.
it's terrible.
And then on the other side of the ball, their ground game for the Saints really showed up well in this game, which is great because, Carolina has an awful run defense. So great to take advantage of that. I mean, Kamara and Jamal Williams went basically 50-50. I mean, they combined hit just under 100 yards, but A little annoying for my fantasy team, but it's fine. Um, you don't have to split it evenly, but Kamara, is it's been interesting this season. Carr wasn't using him as much as you would expect him to with his, recurring injuries and pain that he's been playing through. So it was kind of interesting here that they're still splitting 50-50 between Jamal Williams, even though Kamara on paper and historically is the better back. So I'm interested in what's going on there.
Well, I think they should be. We talk about the 1-2 punch, right? And people forget, just last year, Jamal Williams led the NFL in rushing touchdowns. So I think they should be using him more. And Alvin Kamara is such a good pass catching back that don't have Alvin Kamara running straight up the middle. Give that to Jamal Williams and have Kamara be your screen pass catcher and your break it outside type of guy, and take some pressure off of Derek Carr, which they did. I mean, Carr only threw for 119 yards, but the running game, like you said, was key. And Carolina's just so bad. Who's the fall guy now? You fired Frank Reich. And neither of us like Frank Reich, but I mean, it's not getting any better. It's not like you fired Frank Reich and suddenly you're more competitive or you're winning games. You're still only one win, 1-12. So Carolina is in a bad spot right now, and I don't know how soon it gets that much better.
And what's sucky is generally when you are losing games and you have a losing record and you make coaching changes, you have well, at least we get this in the
Yeah,
draft. Like at least we get that high draft pick.
yeah.
And yeah, so I mean the morale's got to be a mess there. And you mentioned something about, and I kind of want to touch on this because I've felt this way for a while. So the stat of most rushing touchdowns, I've always thought was a very misleading thing. Like, cool. However, the reason that you're being used for those touchdowns is because the better guy is generally covered. So while it's generally the second or the third running back on the squad, unless it's someone insane, like beast mode or, that you would run through a bus. But generally it's the second or the third running back who leads the team in rushing touchdowns because they're the one who's less defended because they're less of a threat. So yes, he does have that stat from last year, but do I think that makes him the best running back? No.
Well, I agree. Kamara's obviously the better running back, but I think down in the red zone when it's like, it's goal line and it's a mess in the trenches, Jamal Williams is probably your tougher runner there. And you can use Kamara as a decoy. Like
Yeah.
like if you're on goal line and then you send Kamara out to the outside to potentially pass catch or you fake a handoff to him, half the linebackers are going to react to that, and then you give it to Jamal Williams up the middle. But part of the reason he was doing that in Detroit is they had one of the best O-lines in football last year as well. But he's valuable. I mean, I think that they should not put the entire load on Alvin Kamara and use Jamal Williams some as well.
I mean, they were split 50-50 in this game. So, I mean, they're doing a good job of splitting the carries. I was just annoyed because Kamara is on my fantasy team, but it's fine. Still won the matchup, so not a big deal.
Nice.
But I mean, Carolina had their best run game this season. The Saints didn't have their best run game, but Carolina did. So at least there's, slight glimmers of hope there. I mean, they had season high 204 yards, 5.2 yards per carry. Hubbard had 23 carries for 87 yards. Miles Sanders, 10 carries for 74 yards, had a 48-yard run in the game. So at least they know their run game is taken care of if there is any hope for life next season.
Yeah. If not for the run game, how would that offense even move the ball?
I mean,
Like,
yeah, but to
it's
only have 6
amazing.
points off of all that, God,
It's
guys, come on.
amazing that Bryce Young was the top prospect and the number one overall pick. Like he looks so bad right now. It's amazing how bad he looks.
Yeah, I don't know. Like it's
Yeah,
interesting how sometimes like these completely overlooked people in the draft. I mean, Brock Purdy, Mr.
yeah.
Irrelevant, can just, be a completely different person under the right coaching with the right team, the right environment. And then these players who were so hyped up in the draft get into the NFL and just completely fall off.
And that's where the narrative that I've been pushing forever is the situation and the environment that you're drafted into matters so much. Um, I don't think anyone would disagree. I think if you drop Bryce Young into that 49er offense, he looks a hell of a lot better.
Yeah.
And you put Brock Purdy in this Carolina offense, and he looks a hell of a lot worse. It matters the situation, the environment, the play caller, the O line, the weapons. Everything matters. Everything's tied together. And this is why Bears fans need to shut the hell up talking about Justin Fields the way they have been, because that situation over there in Chicago has been shit. So
Yeah, I actually I think Justin Fields is the guy, and I think the games that they have pulled off wins in this season really highlight his efforts and his mental acuity of the game. He understands what's going on. So I
mhm.
think Fields has a ton of mental knowledge of the game, and I feel like he knows what to do, but having the right weapons for him to get the ball to would be super helpful.
Yeah,
So
a
I hope
play
they hang on to
caller
him and build around him for sure.
and a play caller that's not Luke Getzey. For the love of Christ, stop hiring Green Bay Packer Trojan horses that come in here and destroy the franchise.
I've kind of always thought that too. I'm like, oh, okay, so they're going from Green Bay to make the Bears lose. Perfect. I
Like
like it.
Jimmy Graham, what did he do in Chicago? What MD Jennings? You name
Oh,
every Packer that we've brought in, they're ass.
what's funny though is they'll go to Minnesota and play well and then beat up on Green Bay. So I don't understand. Like,
And then we let our best players like Adrian Amos and Julius Peppers go to Green Bay. Like,
and
what are
they
we
love
doing
Green
here?
Bay. I
I
think I
hate
think
it.
it's a mindset in Chicago. I just something
Yeah.
about just being there, something's wrong there. But you mentioned Jimmy Graham. Let's just shout out Jimmy Graham real quick. So he's only been active 9 of 13 games
Hmm.
before this week. So I guess 9 of 10 of 14 at this point. He's got 4 catches for 30 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, back-to-back weeks with touchdowns.
Yeah. So why aren't they using him more in the red zone? He's
They
huge.
should be.
When they made, I mean, that touchdown to him this week, he was flying. Like he was like 8 feet from the ground, I swear. And it's funny too, because before the past couple weeks, I completely forgot he existed. Like I mean, he left Green Bay, he went, he went to that other place where he went, but like I just forget about him because he's just done nothing all season. And there's not been a reason for why he's not active in these games, but in the games that he's been in recently, I mean, he is great in the red zone. So I don't know why they're not using him more. So I've got
Yeah,
some questions for New Orleans about that.
yeah, I hope they use him more going forward. They're going to need him. They're in they pulled to even in that division lead. So it's going to be interesting to see how that NFC South shakes out. Um, a game that we both agreed on, and we tried to talk ourselves into taking the Jets, but it's like the Texans have been playing so well, but we knew the loss of Tank Dell was a big
Mhm.
loss, but neither of us thought it was enough to pick the Jets here. Um,
What's interesting is even when we were picking this game, I said we have seen the Jets go really hard on those good quarterbacks. I mean, they beat Josh Allen, they beat Jalen Hurts. Patrick Mahomes, was losing his
damn near
mind during
beat
this game.
him.
Justin Herbert was losing his mind. So they
Yeah,
play really well against good quarterbacks. And I mean, we both kind of had a feeling. We picked the
yeah.
Texans because it was a safer pick with how they've been playing. But I mean, Nico Collins, who we thought might make up for the, lack of Tank Dell, had an injury in the first half. So then
Yep.
Stroud is throwing to who against the best pass defense in the NFL? I mean, it was a rough night for the Texans going into it. We already knew it was going to be a tough matchup, but losing their, second best weapon in the first half of the game, yeah.
I,
So,
I believe Dalton Schultz was out as well.
mhm.
So it was just no weapons to throw to. Brevin Jordan is your top receiver. And then CJ Stroud goes down with a concussion in this game as well. So, but all that being said, they could have been 10-6 or 7-6. Where the hell did this 30-point second half explosion come from?
I mean, it's interesting because the Jets got this amazing performance out of Zach Wilson, which completely unexpected.
Yeah.
And then the next day it starts spreading around social media that they're probably parting ways officially at the end of the
Yeah.
season. Um, so maybe he had a talk with them and he's like, listen, I want to go somewhere else. And I mean, we've heard the conversations about how they, he's been cleared from injury and he's good to start, but he doesn't want to. So I feel like now maybe he's showing out because he's ready to leave and he wants to show other teams he still has what it takes when his heart is in it, which it hasn't been this season because I mean, it's been a rough season for the Jets.
Yeah, but they snap that 5-game losing streak. They get to 5-8. Their next game is in Miami against the Dolphins. I mean, any chance they can go into Miami, Aaron Rodgers is close to returning, but it's going to be hard to kind of win out, even if it's until Christmas Eve. I mean, they need to win in Miami just to get to 6-8. It's going to be a tough one.
I mean, shout out to the Titans for knocking Miami down a little bit this week.
And there's
So
a chance Tyreek Hill might not play in that game.
yeah, so there's a shot. If
Yeah,
our defense keeps playing that well, and I mean, if Zach Wilson keeps, I mean, I was not expecting that performance from him at all. Was I expecting a good defensive performance? Yes, but I was shocked at what that offense did. Zach Wilson,
yeah.
75% of his passes, 301 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, there was a couple really bad decisions. He threw across his body, and I mean, it should have been a pick, but magically got into Garrett Wilson's hands. So and if he keeps playing like that, I guess he's trying to set things up for Rodgers to come back, but not the game I
Hey,
expected at all.
if Will Levis can dice up the Dolphins defense the way he did, hey, I think we're talking myself in to a Jets pick on coming up. So
I'm kind of thinking the same thing. I was like, oh, are we to regret this later? Um,
yeah. Um, but the Texans, they just need to get healthy. Will Anderson went out in this game. Nico Collins went out. CJ Stroud went out. And they're fighting for the playoffs. These injuries might catch up and keep them out of the playoffs.
yeah. One quick shout out to Devin Singletary. He has been, not necessarily benched, but he's been knocked down out of, first string a little bit this season, but he put on a great performance. 65 yards, a touchdown, 13 carries. Missed all three of his targets as far as passes, but he's trying to get back in there. So I'm glad to see him, kind of fighting for his spot a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. How about Rams Ravens? This game was in crazy 9 lead changes in this game.
This game was so fun to watch. And I didn't think it would be this good. Like the Rams really, I mean, you go back 4 weeks ago, this should have been a blowout. It would have been, Ravens 40, Rams 13 or something. But these
Hmm.
teams have both very much shifted their performances over the past month. I mean, completely trending in opposite directions. The Ravens have gotten a lot less competitive since Mark Andrews went out. Meanwhile, the Rams are looking a lot better. I mean, Matthew Stafford is playing well, which is a weird thing for a Packers fan to have to say out loud. Kyron Williams is, he's been healthier. He's been putting on a good show. So it was really back and forth and really fun and seemed pretty evenly matched. I mean, the Ravens have been using Mark Andrews' replacement, Isaiah Likely, really well. So he's stepping in
Yeah.
great as a second option at tight end for them. But yeah, it was a quite competitive game, and I was a little bit surprised by it.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is you're gonna be this is an interesting spin from what we were just talking about, but I came away from this game even more impressed by the Ravens, and I'll tell you why. Is the fact that the issues that the Ravens have had, the Rams come in red hot. They're on a 3-game winning streak. It's an opportunity to get above 500 and make the playoffs. And they're feeling themselves. They're playing confident. Kyron Williams and Stafford are playing great. And Puka Nakua and Cooper Kupp, they got weapons all over, and they're playing confidently. Even the defense was playing better. Um, but the Ravens in recent history, going back last year, going back 2 years ago, they find a way to lose these games. They
Mhm.
don't play their best football, and at the end of the game, they lose. And Lamar Jackson has really gotten better this year more than ever. He's so much more patient back there. He doesn't look to run. As soon as the first read is covered, he used to take off and run. Now he's sitting back there buying time and looking at all of his, weapons, looking all over the field. Check one, check two, check three, even check four. And it's helped that offense a ton. And I know losing Mark Andrews is huge, but he spreads the ball around. He goes to OBJ, Zay Flowers, Isaiah Likely, all with 60 plus receiving yards and a touchdown each. And they have a great defense, but on when the days that your defense doesn't play its best, the fact that they were able to stay competitive in this game, the Rams offense is putting up points at a high clip, and Lamar in this offense keeps coming back, keeps coming back. And Lamar, that ability to go down there and take the lead late and then convert that 2-point conversion. If you don't convert that too, like you would know in the Packers game, that 2-point conversion there is huge.
Yeah.
And if you don't get that, and then the team goes down and kicks a field goal, you lose. And the fact that they were able to convert that, even though they allowed it to go to overtime, and then the special teams makes the play and wins it. But I'm very encouraged by the Ravens' ability to keep fighting and keep responding through adversity. You know what I mean?
No, I absolutely agree with you because I mean, this game they were fighting the weather conditions. It was a messy, damp, cold game. And what impressed me is previously we have seen Lamar Jackson get in his head and start getting frustrated with himself and make bad decisions in these type of games. And I
try
mean,
to
he
do it
did
with his legs, right?
well, and he rushed for 70 yards in this game. He rushed
Yeah,
11 times, but he was choosing those when it was, I mean, his rushes were so well placed. They were
yeah,
timed well. He waited until the absolute right time to run. He waited for people to get open. And I agree with you that, in previous years, he's put his body at risk before, and he was taking care of himself. He was holding onto the ball, he was protecting the ball, and I think he's learning so much more about how to be an efficient quarterback this
the
season.
mental side. Yeah,
Yeah, on the mental side, and he is very much playing the mental game and not letting the pressure get to him. So I was pretty impressed by his mindset in this game for sure.
yeah. In recent history, this is a game they lose, and they. So I'm very encouraged that they stuck with it, found a way to win it, and I'm confident more so this year than ever before that this team can go deep into the playoffs and playing at home. Potentially getting the 1 seed uh, is huge. And if you play the Chiefs, then they have to come to Baltimore instead of you going to Arrowhead. And I think it's an opportunity for the Ravens to get at least to the AFC Championship game, if not go on a Super Bowl run. So, um, despite not playing their best football, I'm encouraged.
Yeah, and what's interesting is going into this game, Jackson was only one of three quarterbacks without a deep touchdown pass this season.
Hmm.
Bryce Young and Zach Wilson being the other two. So he had three of his 90 passes that were completions, 121 yards. So three touchdowns, one interception on those. So while we've seen him in the past have those issues, him taking his time and waiting for people to get open really paid off in this game.
Yeah,
And on the other side of the ball, just a quick shout out to Matt Stafford. He is improving his accuracy a lot this season. I mean, 294 yards, three touchdowns. He's 10 touchdowns to one interception over his past three games. So every game Stafford has started in this season, I mean, they're 6-6, they're at 500. He's giving the Rams a fighting chance. I just don't think they have quite the team to pull off a winning season and be competitive down the stretch. But Stafford is really playing some of his best football the past month, so good for him.
yeah. And so with this loss, they fall to 6-7, tied with Seattle, and but they have the tiebreaker. They swept Seattle this year, so this would have been a huge win, and it sucks they couldn't get it done. Their 3-game winning streak gets snapped, and it'll be imperative to see how they finish the year. At 6-7, there's not a lot of room for error. They kind of
Yeah.
need to win 4 straight, or they need to at least go 3-1 just to get to 9-8. So it'll be interesting to see how the Rams close out this season. Not a lot of room for error, like I said.
And you mentioned on their overtime play quickly. So just to remark on how unusual this year has been as far as overtime performances, we've had some very exciting overtimes. In the history of the NFL, there's only been 4 overtime punt return touchdowns. 2 of
Yeah.
them were this season.
Yep.
So, I
Yeah,
mean,
the
this year
Jets.
for overtime is quite exciting this year. I
Yeah.
mean, half of all of them in history. So it's, it was a great overtime and a great game to watch as they, went back and forth. And I'm glad it wasn't, on the first kick of the game, because I really hate the touchdown on the first play of the game situation that, will irk me to no end. I mean, they each had a possession, and then, whoever pulled it off, and that was some beautiful special teams play.
Absolutely.
Um,
Um,
you want to talk about the most exciting game of the week? I know this one was your favorite. You picked
yeah,
the
the
Raiders to
barn
win.
burner. I was rooting for a 0-0 tie. I mean, when you get it was 0-0 at the 2-minute warning in the fourth quarter.
That is
I can't tell
insane.
you how much I was rooting for Greg Joseph to miss that kick.
Listen,
Uh,
I will root for a tie. I wanted like a safety, like give me a 2-0. Like throughout the
yeah,
course of NFL history, only 73 games have ended at 0-0, but it hasn't happened since the Giants and the Lions. Obviously, it would be those two did it in 1943.
wow,
So that would have been really fun. It's been what do math really quick,
forever.
80 years.
Yeah, and this is the lowest scoring game since 2007. That game was the Mud Bowl. You can look that
Mhm.
one up on YouTube.
That's a fun game.
Um, yeah, and they punt the ball and it just sticks into the ground.
Yeah,
But
I
three
agree.
to nothing, and the fact that that was a mud game, that was the reason that was 3-0. This was in perfectly. This was in a dome.
And it's funny too, because
So
like it would be one thing if these were both, amazing defenses. Like Minnesota has a solid defense. The Raiders have occasionally had a good defensive game, but it's not like they're that good. Like they're not 3-0 good.
yeah,
And I mean, Minnesota's offense they've been through it this season. I mean, Dobbs looked like he was the answer for a little bit. That, rocket has crash landed. But I mean, Las Vegas, Mark Davis, come on. I mean, letting John Gruden be pushed out, Josh McDaniels came in and just, I mean, oh God, I can't get over how much damage McDaniels did to that offense.
no, I know. You hire Josh McDaniels, you're asking for trouble every time, and this team. I like this Vikings defense though. I mean, they're gonna shut out your boy Jake Brady next week. If they put up a 0 on the Bengals, then I want to hear some praise for the Vikings defense.
Oh, I don't, doubt them. I know they're a good defense. I just said they're a good defense. I just, worry about their offense being able to score points at this point.
It's true, and
I mean, if Kirk Cousins was in, absolutely Minnesota all day. But
yeah, and it sucks that Josh Dobbs has fallen off as much as he did. Benched for what, the second straight game. Uh, Nick Mullins doesn't really move the needle, but if he can do anything better than Dobbs, I mean, when Dobbs got benched, he had 0 points and a combined 84 yards. So Nick Mullins came in and, threw for 83 yards, out threw Dobbs in like half a quarter. So maybe he can provide a spark. You never know. Um, But I mean, not a lot to talk about with this game. The Raiders got into field goal range at one point, and then Hunter Renfro fumbles the ball. Just, one of those games. I don't think either of these teams is that bad offensively. Sometimes you get in a game where just nothing's working right, and both the
yeah,
defenses have the offense's number. But one of those nasty, all-time ugly games.
yeah, it was hideous. One storyline we do need to quickly mention on Justin Jefferson came back after being out for what, 7 weeks?
Mm-hmm.
He comes into this game and then leaves in the second quarter with a chest injury, sent him to the hospital. But they say he might play Thursday. So very glad that it, wasn't I mean, we saw DeMar Hamlin last year. I'm glad it wasn't like that kind of chest injury. But he seems good to go. So hopefully we'll get to see him in that matchup, because I think that'll be a very interesting game.
And that's the exact thing that Tom Brady was referencing, where back in the day they would teach quarterbacks to, hey, maybe don't throw to the receiver there because he's going to get knocked out.
Hmm.
And they don't teach that anymore. They try to protect the receivers from the defense, and the quarterbacks can just make terrible decision after terrible decision, and then you get your star quarterback knocked out in the first quarter.
Yeah.
That's exactly what Brady was talking about.
Yeah, I mean, he was the sacrificial lamb there. Like, that was such an ugly and dirty throw to make
Yeah,
as a quarterback. And I mean, Justin Jefferson is the type of person, I mean, he's a player. He will go after the ball. He is going to trust that his quarterback is paying attention to what's happening on the field, because he can look around. All Jefferson's looking at is the ball. So he goes for that catch. And I mean, that was an injury that should not happen. And I don't think would have happened if Kirk Cousins was in that game. But that's,
yeah.
one of the dangers of having to trust other people out there with your, star receivers.
And this is where it comes full circle, right? Josh Dobbs in Arizona, and everyone's like, "Oh, he's not that bad. He's actually borderline starter." And then he goes to Minnesota, and he's the pastronaut, and he's the greatest thing. He's better than Kirk Cousins. And what do we need Cousins for? We have Josh Dobbs, and fast forward a couple of weeks, and now he's benched for Nick Mullins. Like, it always comes full circle, and it's such a week to week league that people overreact on a regular basis, and it's nice to see the NFL make sense from time to time.
Yeah. So, speaking of a game that made sense, I mean, the 49ers have been on such a hot streak and are such an effective offense, defense, special teams. They're just a whole well-rounded team. Obviously, right now, the best team in football. So Seattle comes to town, and everyone had the Niners picked here. And I mean, the Seahawks stayed in this game a bit better than I hoped
Yeah,
they would. Uh,
yeah,
and I mean, Drew Lock against that San Francisco defense, I mean, he played really well, honestly, which I was surprised by.
yeah. They go down. The Niners score immediately, and it's 7-0. Christian McCaffrey first play of the game goes 72 yards, and I'm like, yeah, it's going to script. I expected the Niners to win this thing by 30 or 40, honestly, without Geno Smith. And credit to Seattle and Drew Lock. They hung in there. Score was 21-16 late. Like, they were in it.
Yeah.
The Niners end up winning by 2 scores and got the win. But uh, with Geno Smith out and Drew Lock getting the start, and as red hot as the 49ers have been, they could have easily rolled over and died here and just been like, it's not our, we're eliminated from the playoffs damn near, and we're on a losing streak, and the Niners are too good. But credit to Seattle for fighting and making this game competitive. But the Niners are too good after all, right?
Yeah, I mean, this game was a great game for Seattle with what they were working with against the 49ers. I mean, their defense held them to 28, and they still put up
Mm-hmm.
16 points. I mean, within 2 scores, that's a win for Seattle with Drew Lock in this game.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, moving the ball with the run was going to be less effective than the 49ers. But I mean, Kenneth Walker, I mean, they were still moving, using different receivers, using different running backs, spreading the ball around and trying. And they stayed in this till pretty late. So, I mean, it was a great game for Seattle, given what they had to work with. But obviously, the Niners were going to win this one from the get-go. So, I would consider this a win for both teams, which sounds idiotic, but I mean, for
No,
Seattle
I
to
think
stay in the game for that long in this situation with that personnel, I mean, good for them.
Kenneth Walker is damn near an MVP of this team, and I think losing him when they did was really a death sentence. Like, if they had Kenneth Walker for the Thanksgiving game, they might have had a shot to win that. I think they'd win the Cowboy game if Kenneth Walker is available, but losing him at the wrong time of the year, and now they're on a big losing streak. So I don't see them bouncing back from this and making the playoffs. But it shows how valuable he is to the offense.
Do we want to talk real quick about the bounty put on Metcalf?
Um, you can shout it out real quick if you want.
I mean, so basically, a head coach said, "Hey, Metcalf's kind of a hothead. Let's, try to piss him off, and see if
Hmm.
we can knock him out of the game so he's not an issue." Which I don't think is the best thing to have being spread around the news outlets. Granted, if you know someone's a hothead and you know you can piss them off, like push their buttons, but telling your team that there's a Christmas present in it for them if they get a player ejected isn't really the best look, Shanahan. Just saying.
That's old school. He learned that from his dad. That's 90s, 2000s football.
Yeah, not
Um,
2023 football.
I mean, that's known. That's something that doesn't usually get said publicly, but
I
that's
know that's
definitely
what I'm
that.
saying. It shouldn't have been leaked. Like it's one
Yeah,
thing to say it, but like whoever like let that slip, like, oh, let's not do that.
it's
Um,
better than the bounty gate. It's better than trying
yeah,
to hurt him. You know,
yeah,
when you know someone is mentally, you can get under their skin. You can get away with that rather than hurting someone, but it's still, and hopefully DK learns from this and says, "Hey, I need to control my emotions better too."
yeah.
There's lessons to be learned there.
I'm sure he and Pete Carroll had to sit down after this one, especially after that news broke. Like they knew that you were that much of a hothead that they could get you ejected from the game by just
Yeah,
like irking you enough to make you blow up. Like, come on, bro. Let's get some anger management classes going. Like, I'm sure he's got some like homework now after
I
this
mean,
game.
if you're an NBA fan, that's who Dennis Rodman and Ron Artest were. Like
Hmm.
they were the hotheads, but it was also their goal to get under the opponent's hothead skin. I mean, Dennis Rodman did that to Alonzo Mourning all the time. Like it was pretty fun to watch
Yeah.
back in the day. But
So speaking of games that were fun to watch, and the fallout from was fun and interesting and all over the news, let's talk Buffalo, Kansas City.
yeah, this game was awesome. Bills were really up against it. Like if they don't win this game, they're not making the playoffs likely. And so they go into Arrowhead. They get out to a 14-0 lead and they're playing well, they're playing confident. They allow the Chiefs to get back in it though, and it gets really interesting late. But I the Chiefs, I mean, Mahomes' behavior after this
Well,
game
yeah.
is ridiculous.
I mean, but
Um,
before we get into that too much, let's talk a little bit about, the actual game. Let's talk about the Bills first because I mean, once we get into the Chiefs, we won't come back.
yeah.
Josh Allen took opportunities, did more running than usual. He had 10 scrambles in this game. Couple kneel downs there at the end that kind of knocked some of the yards off, but a few accuracy issues for him. He had some great throws though, and it was interesting because we had a feeling about this game going into it. The Chiefs did not look good against Green Bay. And we thought that the Bills would see this as a must-win game, and they did, and they
Hmm.
pulled off the win. So shout out to us for picking this one correctly because that was not who was being picked. I mean, Kansas City was supposed to have a get right game here. And yeah, we were right and we nailed that. Dawson Knox had an amazing game. Caught some beautiful passes, but now we can switch and talk about um Kadarius Toney has had issues his entire career with awful penalties and horrible drops. And man, he had both in this game. You want to walk us through that?
Yeah, real quick on the Bills. I think that one of the things that has made the Bills a better team since firing Ken Dorsey and going with Joe Brady is emphasizing running back James Cook, and he's getting him a lot more involved, and that's really opening up the offense as well. James Cook is becoming one of their more reliable weapons. Combines for 141 yards and a touchdown. Usually in recent history, Josh Allen, where he gets into trouble, is trying to force feed Stephon Diggs,
Mm-hmm.
and he's held to just 4 catches for 24 yards. Usually, with that stat line, it's a Bills loss.
Yeah, because he
But
throws a pick at the end when they're under pressure. Yeah.
yeah, but he
And
spread the ball around. They got Cook involved. They got the tight end involved. Khalil Shakir is becoming more of a thing. So I think Joe Brady is improving that Bills offense.
Well, yeah,
Um,
and especially, I mean, so you talk about Josh Allen not risking the ball here. He finished with more passing yards under pressure at 136 than against no pressure in this game, 97. So he was
mhm.
being so calm against the blitz. And I mean, pressure on 72% of his dropbacks. So, he both quarterbacks in this game had sub 80 passer ratings. First matchup between the two where they were both under 100. And we know Josh Allen is good at Arrowhead. So this game was, not the most accurate game, but he stayed calm. And I mean, the Bills have had 4 blown fourth quarter leads this season.
Mhm.
And this is the first time that their defense has really held on and helped them not do that. And then Josh Allen did the rest. And it was a great performance by the Bills. But why don't you get going on the Chiefs?
Yeah, and there was multiple issues here for the Chiefs, and they're making mistakes. This isn't the same old Chiefs. And whether you want to say it's Eric Bieniemy being gone and Matt Nagy being the new OC, or the lack of Tyreek Hill and the lack of reliable pass catchers, too many drops. On top of that, Kadarius Toney lining up off sides, but Mahomes completely lost his shit post game, and
So what's interesting is, that play would have been amazing. Like, had
mhm,
that play stood. But what had happened was the ball was snapped, a flag was thrown. Immediately, the Buffalo defense was pointing because they knew who it was on. But
yeah,
Kansas City rolled as if they got a free play. So, that the Buffalo defense kind of like takes a step back and, doesn't try as hard because they're like, wait, what are you guys doing? That penalty was on you. And so many people online are like, oh, well, it was such an amazing play. Yeah, because their defense knew the penalty was against Kansas City. So why would they pursue the play that was obviously going to get called back?
yeah, and I mean, whether they weren't going 100% or not, like that was a great play. It was. Travis Kelce has done that before, and it's
Yeah.
worked, and
Had it
that they're
counted, it
capable of
would have
that.
been an amazing season high highlight, but
Yeah,
it did not
but
count. And it wasn't like the flag was thrown late. The
yeah,
flag came out immediately.
yeah, and so
So, yeah.
Um, that's definitely on Kadarius Toney. He has to double check with the ref, and you see him point, but he doesn't look to make sure. He needs to, and I think there was too much going on in his head. Um, but you have to make sure you're on sides, and he
What's
was
interesting
obviously off sides.
What's
Yeah,
interesting is there have been tweets posted from NFL insiders who were like, no, he pointed and the line judge said he was good. And then the video of the is spreading around and like there was no communication between them. He pointed, but the line judge didn't react to him in any way, didn't
and
see
he
him
turned his
anything.
head as soon as he pointed. It's not like he waited and looked for confirmation. He just pointed and then turned away.
Yeah. But NFL
And
insiders were tweeting like, yeah, no, he received confirmation that he was good. And then the video came out and then those tweets are all deleted. Like, and now there's a thread on Twitter with all links to every play that the Chiefs have benefited from a missed call against them.
yeah, I'll get to that here in a second. But so, um, Mahomes, I had never seen Mahomes has never reacted like this in his entire pro career, and I'm pretty sure not in college either. Um, to me, this is multiple angles here. This is a frustrating season, starting week one with the drops against the Lions and the week one loss to the Lions, and all the way until now. It's the frustration of uncharacteristic Chiefs performances, whether it's penalties, drops, not on the same page all year long. But Mahomes, all this frustration and anger at losing this game, a game they needed in Arrowhead to a quarterback that's had the most success in Arrowhead against him in his career, Josh Allen. Now he's got 3 wins in Arrowhead versus Mahomes. So Mahomes is pissed off about all that, but his comments, they're so off base. He's mad at the refs. Mahomes, be mad at Kadarius Toney. What are you doing here? The
I mean,
refs called the right play, the right
yeah, and
penalty.
you can be frustrated and try to scapegoat the refs here, but they looked like idiots. I mean, both he and Andy Reid like went off publicly about officiating, and it's been kind of a known and proven fact over the past few seasons that the Chiefs have benefited from so many penalties and missed
Yeah,
calls and things that the refs have let slide. So it's interesting now that the tables are turning a little bit, how angry they get about this. Like now you know how everyone else feels. Um,
yeah,
and granted, officiating has been awful this season, but this situation they weren't wrong.
yeah.
And like the play last week against Green Bay when PI should have been called against the Packers on MVS. Like granted, MVS can't rarely catches the ball anyway. But yeah, that was a missed penalty. But then, a few plays prior to that, there was a completely bogus unnecessary roughness call against the Packers. So that game kind of evened out. But this, like, I could see being pissed off at refs for, other plays, but this one, they were absolutely correct. And Andy Reid went out to say that he has never heard or never seen that called ever, which
Well,
somebody went back and checked. In his head coaching career, he has led 25,000 offensive plays. This is the first offensive offsides that has ever been called against his team. So
yeah.
that is a factual statement. He has never had it called against him, but they're calling it more often. It's been called 13 times this year. It was called 3 times last year, no times the year before that. But it's not like it's a new made up thing and they just whipped it out for this game to make the Chiefs lose.
Yeah, it's a point of emphasis this year. This offseason, they talked about it and complained about it and said it's getting egregious where offensive linemen or I mean, wide receivers are lining up off sides. And at some point, we need to start calling this. And I think another point of emphasis is going to be the offensive linemen with a half a step into the backfield lining up like that so they can protect the quarterback better. That's been an issue, and the Chiefs got away with that all week one, all season long. They've gotten away with that. So, yes, it's well documented, and I've said it every time it's happened. The Chiefs have gotten the benefit of officiating calls in not just regular season games, in conference championship games. And the Mahomes thing where he gets to the sideline and purposefully goes upfield trying to get more yardage, baiting the defender to hit him. And then when the hitter commits and the defender commits and hits Mahomes, then he quickly takes a step towards out of bounds and then flails his arms up in the air to
Mm-hmm.
get a call.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, he gets that call. And we've seen it in, I believe, back to back AFC championship games. I remember we saw it against the Cleveland Browns playoff game in
Yep.
Arrowhead. We've seen it in the Super Bowl against Tampa Bay and against San Francisco. Mahomes is always doing this. So Mahomes looks like an absolute crybaby here,
Yeah. And
getting
what's
upset at the
interesting
refs.
is it
And
wasn't even Tony. It wasn't just Tony who was messing this game up for on the receiving core. Like Richie James dropped a pass. Rashee Rice
mhm,
lost a fumble at midfield down 17-14. Mahomes had an interception that was tipped. Like it wasn't like this was the deciding, like this is what lost them the game. I
yeah,
mean, they had a really slow start. For the third consecutive games, they trailed by double digits. I mean, they've averaged just 9 points in the opening half of a game for the last 3 games. Like you can't win games when you don't put up scores in the first half. Like that was not the deciding factor in this game. Your offense not being able to catch the ball, and we know you're missing weapons. That is frustrating, but don't take it out on the refs.
exactly. It's frustrating, and he's showing his frustration. But the fact that he's pointing it to the refs is misguided, and he's kind of like trying looking for sympathy, right? When he goes to shake hands with Josh Allen,
Oh my God,
he's
that was
still
so funny.
complaining about it. And what do you want Josh Allen to say there? Like Josh is like, you got I got screwed over in the playoff game in Arrowhead multiple times. Like I've gotten screwed over many times. Like, what do you want me to say here? Like, it's a bad look for Mahomes there. It's
Mhm.
a bad look for Mahomes post game. It's a bad look for him when he has to be held back on the sideline from going to the ref. And
Yeah.
he should feel embarrassed about it. And no one is going to defend Mahomes here except for Homer Kansas City Chief fans because we all know it. And I'm glad that this finally happened so that people can see that Mahomes has been trying to cheat the system for a while with flopping, with begging for calls. And the Chiefs have gotten the benefit of calls so often. I'm glad that post went up by that Broncos fan to show all those missed calls because it's well documented. And I think they do feel embarrassed about it. I think Mahomes is like, man, I look kind of like an idiot for
Yeah.
reacting the way I did. And I think Andy Reid was just defending his quarterback.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean it's one thing to support your guy, but I mean think of all the post-game interviews and how this could have played out. Like it could have been one of those situations where you gain respect for someone who said, "Yeah, I mean, well, I didn't agree with the call, but we shouldn't have been in a situation to
yeah,
need a
take the
miraculous,
high road. Yeah,
Music City replay to win the game. Like we shouldn't
yeah.
have been down 2 scores." Like
Hmm.
the respect you gain for a quarterback in that situation versus this, like that's just embarrassing.
Well, it makes Mahomes look human, and it shows that he's not perfect, and it shows that the frustration of this season is getting to the Chiefs, and they're cracking. And Mahomes is he's the leader of that team. He's the best player on the team. He's the guy they all follow. And when you see Mahomes crack like that, it shows that this isn't the same Chiefs. And he's not truly mad at the refs. He's mad at the team and the way the season's going.
In the
And
situation for sure.
yeah, and I they're going to be finally playing on the road in the playoffs, and they're going to be up for it because who outside of Travis Kelce and maybe Rashee Rice of late can they count on, right?
Yeah. And I mean, he wasn't even much of a factor in this game either.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I mean,
but but shout out to the Bills, a huge road win, and that pretty much saved their season.
mhm.
And now with the Dolphins losing, they're just what 2 games back, and they play the Dolphins week 18. The Bills are still in this, and nobody wants to play the Bills if they're playing confident going into the playoffs, right? No one wants to face this Buffalo team.
Yeah, and it's funny because we picked this one, and then, I mean, there were some very surprising games this week, but I felt very confident in this pick, and I'm glad we were right about this one. Um,
Hmm.
and another game we felt confident in was the Broncos over the Chargers. I mean, people have been talking very positively about the Chargers the past couple of weeks, and you and I just didn't see it, and they find interesting ways to lose every week. I mean, this week, Justin Herbert with the injury. I mean, Easton Stick had to step in as his replacement, and has anyone heard that name before?
Yeah,
Like who?
and Herbert going down is definitely the killer. But man, they started the game off typical Chargers fashion with a turnover on downs and an interception. Like this Charger team, the national media loves the Chargers. Ever since they drafted Justin Herbert, the Chargers have been the national media's darling. They're going to pick them all the time. And every preseason, they overrate the Chargers. And my fallback every year is, well, they're coached by Brandon Staley, and he's going to fuck it up. And he does it every time. They finally make the playoffs, and they got a huge lead on the Jags, and they fuck it up. The one constant is Brandon Staley, and he's gonna get fired very soon. So that's the moral of the story there. Big win for Denver, but like Herbert now is having season-ending surgery on that broken finger. Their season's over.
Yeah. It was a pretty solid game for the Broncos. I mean, Cortland Sutton looked good. Troutman had a surprisingly good game. He's generally not much of a name we hear after the game, but he really stepped in for them. Um, Jerry Jeudy missed out on a touchdown there. He was pretty limited, but um, you know, he
How about,
almost had a couple touchdowns, but was out of bounds. So
how about that Cortland Sutton touchdown catch? You see that he's getting pass interfered on and makes a one-handed
he still
catch.
caught it. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's amazing. Completely unrelated to podcasting. If my second child, my son, had been a girl, she would have been named Sutton. So big Cortland Sutton fans in this house. But that would have been for my husband.
Why
And
not?
something
Why not Cortland?
that's stupid. Yeah. Um, Something that's really been paying off this season, Sean Payton has really been focusing on Russell Wilson's ability that he still has to complete those deep passes.
Mm-hmm.
On the season, he's completed 14 of 37 passes for over 25 yards, or air yards, more yards on
Yeah.
the after that. But I mean, he 4 touchdowns to 1 interception. I mean, he is still able to throw deep, and Sean Payton is really going after that and making sure that's something they're keeping fresh and in the arsenal, and it's really paying off this season.
Yeah, I'm loving it. Like the Broncos turnaround has been one of the best stories of the season. After what, a 1-5 start,
Mm-hmm.
they've won 6 of their last 7. They're looking like a dangerous team if they can get into the playoffs. And they're only a game back of Kansas City right now.
Well, and the way Kansas City is falling apart and Denver is stepping up, I mean, they've already
Just
they've
keep
split the series, so it'll be
keep
interesting
me
to see how
happy,
that plays
Denver.
out.
Don't drop the ball in Detroit. Kick the Lions' ass, and I'll be rocking a Broncos jersey. I need you, Denver. Show up
Or
on Saturday.
do you want me to mail you one of my husband's to borrow?
I mean, you got a Russell Wilson jersey?
No, 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 no. That's wrapped under the Christmas tree right now, but we'll ship that. But yeah, I mean, if they keep those deep passes going, I mean, Russell Wilson, that 46-yard touchdown pass to Cortland Sutton, 60 yards in the air. It was the longest touchdown by air distance so far this season, and Wilson has the 2 longest. So he's really showing some old Seattle Super Bowl rust. So positive things in Denver for sure.
I'd rock a throwback John Elway. That's a jersey I would wear of
That's
Denver.
the one he has, but that one makes me bitter as a Packers fan. The fucking helicopter. Well, yeah. Anyway, we don't talk about that. But
um, yeah.
you want to
What
talk?
about Sunday Night Football?
Yeah, I was just gonna say you want to talk Sunday Night Football. You and I have been nailing our picks up through this stretch. Monday night, not so much, but Sunday late games, we killed it here. We picked the Cowboys to come into Philly and pull off a win there. I mean, great teams, both coming off some pretty tough losses, and when they come off tough losses, you expect them to show back up and rebound and have a get right game. So we would expect a performance from the Eagles that made us forget about the performance against San Francisco. Not so much. That Philadelphia secondary looked so bad in this game.
Yeah. This was shocking. I thought this was going to be a much better performance than this. The Eagles no showing, in Jerry World in Dallas this time. They almost won in Philly earlier in the season, and then in Jerry World, and the Cowboys are so red hot, and the Eagles. One of the things that we were worried about is the way the Eagles lost to the Niners, kind of like their pride taking a hit. And so we felt like the Eagles were going to respond and give it their all in this game, in a division rivalry game, and to get blown out the way they did, down 24-6 at halftime, and to lose 33-13, and the Eagles don't even score an offensive touchdown. That's shocking.
Yeah, it was, not the game I expected for them. I thought they were going to be pissed off and come back and be, throwing elbows on this one.
Mm-hmm.
We knew their secondary was, questionable, but after this one, oh my God, they got completely torched. I mean, Dallas is now the first team to score 30 or more points in each of their first 7 home games in a season in NFL
Yeah.
history. And this one was, the cherry on top of that cake. And what's interesting here is linebacker Shaq Leonard was released from the Colts a couple weeks ago. This was his first game on another team. He played almost 20% of the defensive snaps, had 2 tackles. He was choosing between Philadelphia and Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's kind of an interesting game for him to get out there and see how both these teams performed in this matchup. And I wonder if he's questioning his decision there.
Yeah, and I mean, the Eagles are still very talented. I think they can get it turned around, and they're going to be a tough out in the playoffs regardless. But it'll be interesting to see if the Cowboys steal this division or not. And Hugh Jackson said it. He's like, if the Cowboys are real, they're going to have to win this one. And they made a statement.
They
Yeah.
did, yeah.
And
I mean, outside of the lost fumble by Dak Prescott, I mean, he had an amazing game. 2 touchdowns, 271 yards, no interceptions. I mean, yeah, I was impressed. And I haven't been a Dak hater. I used to talk mad shit about Tony Romo back in the day just because he just bugged me. Something about his face. I love him as a broadcaster. I think he's just super intellectual in the way he explains it. He explains it so my 6-year-old could understand, which I love. But Dak has been just really focused on improving every way he can. And this game really showed like how well his mindset is about the game and how he is finding open receivers and not making stupid mistakes like we have seen from him occasionally in the past.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what else there is to say about this one. The Eagles had another tough game. Hurts wasn't finishing drives. There were giveaways constantly. I mean, his stat line at the end of the game is not what we expect from him at all. 18 of 27, 197 yards, no touchdowns.
Yeah, shocking.
So,
I doubt anybody had the only Eagles touchdown coming from Jalen Carter on
yeah.
their bingo card. And then shout out rookie kicker Brandon Aubrey, 4
Oh
for
my
4
God.
on field goals, including makes from 59 and 60. If he doesn't make one of those, then it's a 2-score game and the Eagles get the ball at midfield. So that kick, making it 3 scores from distance, really was a big factor in this game. It could have been closer without these kicks.
I mean, he's 8 for 8 from 50 plus yards. He's 30 for 30 as a rookie. I mean,
Yeah.
we're so used to the Cowboys having issues with their kicker. I mean, those issues are gone.
Yep. You're gonna have to become a Brandon Aubrey fan after, unless Justin Tucker comes through and wins a Super Bowl.
I mean, my dog's name is Tucker. He came with that name. I didn't name him after Justin Tucker. I mean, I could
I,
have named him Crosby if Mason was still in the Packers, but Justin Tucker has always been my favorite kicker, but this Aubrey kid is real fun to watch.
mm-hmm. You should have
Um,
called him. You should have named him Gold.
no, just dead stop. No. So, we just talked about our stretch of games where we nailed our picks and we agreed on the games. I mean, I had, the last 7 picks right. And then let's move to Monday night where I was completely demolished. And I think kind of everyone was wrong on at least one of these Monday night games.
Yeah, I went 0 for 2 as well. I mean, the consensus was the Dolphins and the Packers. Let's talk Titans Dolphins, where this is a bad look for Miami, a team that was competing and they're number 1 in the AFC going into this game. And you think about how impactful that could be to have it go through, have the playoffs go through Miami. And the Dolphins hate going where it's cold, so that could be a huge benefit for them. And they're playing with their food. They're down 10-7 at halftime, kind of messing around, and we're shocked by the score. And then 2 fumbles in a row, and suddenly the Dolphins are up 27-13 with 3 minutes left, and the game's over. The game's over. And all of a sudden, rookie Will Levis comes through and beats the Dolphins 28-27 and shocks them. And that had to, shock the Dolphins. Like the Dolphins locker room had to be like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah, I mean, we're used to the Dolphins being explosive on offense. And I mean, the Dolphins are the first team in NFL history to lose a game in regulation while having a 14-point lead with less than 3 minutes on the clock.
Yeah.
I mean, there has been 17,500 games before
Yep.
this one, and it was the first time that's happened. So, I mean, I bet the Titans were shocked too. Like, I thought they were like, I'm sure that was like an out of body experience. I mean, this was one of those, the freak accident situations, and they lucked into a win. And I mean, the Titans never gave up in this game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they struggled offensively throughout the night. Like, I mean, we had 2 turnovers on offense. Like, nobody, I think they forgot to tell Will Levis that they were, not playing that well, because I mean, that last touchdown drive where they cut the margin down to 6, I mean, he was so good. It was like an Aaron Rodgers comeback. Like those throws, the accuracy, the arm, like he was thrown into tight little windows too. So I was impressive. And then I mean, Derrick Henry, obviously, when it's a close game between the Titans and somebody else, I'll just pick whatever team Derrick Henry's on, because I mean, that boy, That touchdown
He's
was
still,
so good. He's just
yeah.
so you can trust him in any situation basically. Like he's so unstoppable. So, it was a great game for them. Tua had a really disappointing night. Um,
This is
23 of 33. I mean, that sucks.
this is why I still don't really trust Tua in big games and come playoff time. I don't. Like even last year, Tua was hurt for the playoff game, so he didn't get an opportunity for that. Um, I don't trust Tua. Like, and this game is a perfect example of, you know, uh, just not whatever the case is, slipping and falling, mishandling a snap and then fumbling, different issues that when it comes down to the crunch time, he just doesn't seem to be the most clutch and the most reliable. I mean, they had the ball down 1 point. All they needed was a field goal with plenty of time on the clock, no timeouts. But still, with you think the Dolphins' offense, you think that should be easy, and the fact that they weren't able to get it done and turn the ball over on downs like that, a really deflating way to end the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough loss, but I mean, we've seen the Dolphins, put up some ridiculous stat lines this year. So I expect a bounce back from them. But that defense really needs to step up. They
Yeah,
just need to make two stops at the end there, and then the number one seed was the Dolphins. 4 games left in the season. Now they're a game behind the Ravens for the top spot, so they have to beat Baltimore in week 17 for the tiebreaker. So
yeah, and when they lose to the Jets, then they're going to be 2 games back.
mhm. So definitely a big loss for Miami, but we'll see.
Yeah, Tyreek Hill suffers an ankle injury and might miss the Jets game. Center Connor Williams, their starting center, tears his ACL and is done for the year. So a big loss there. And the Dolphins signed defensive end Melvin Ingram, who recorded 6 sacks last season for the Dolphins. So they bring him back to try and help the defense. But the Tyreek Hill injury is definitely something to keep an eye on because they're not the same offense without him.
Yeah. He's definitely the MVP of that offense for sure because Tua wouldn't be putting up the numbers he is without Tyreek to throw to. So
Absolutely.
definitely gonna be missing him if he misses the game.
Now let's get to your team. I want to hear the venting from your team. The Packers at the Giants. They come in on a 3-game winning streak, winners of 4 of the last 5. An opportunity to get to a 4-game winning streak, keep the positive momentum, and draw closer to Detroit, who's opening the door in that division. This was pulled it off. I mean, Jordan Love was clutch once again, but the defense dropped the ball at the end.
So I am going to quote Mike Daniels, who obviously has, he played for the Packers for years. And he posted this the other day. He said, Packers fans, no matter the coordinator, no matter the personnel, we seem to not be able to be elite in defense. I played along legit Hall of Fame players, several all pros and pro bowlers, yet mid to bottom ranks every year.
Mm-hmm.
Years later, I see the same thing even with the culture change. Why? The defense
Yeah.
has always been a mess. The Packers' run D was hot garbage for most of the season. The offense stepped up the past couple weeks and kind of overshadowed that a bit, but that run defense is still complete garbage. And I mean, I have, said multiple times like I'll start believing in them if they can beat Kansas City. And I, had no expectations coming to this season. So I don't have doubts about Jordan Love after this game. It's not like this game made me change my mind about him. Our defense is still the issue and has been the issue for years, and it makes me crazy.
Mm-hmm. What was it that one chick said as a Annie Agar or something? She's like, the Packers, Joe Barry loves the prevent defense so much they should prevent him from getting on the team bus or the team plane.
Yeah, prevent him from getting on the plane. She is hilarious. I adore
Yeah.
her. Some of her posts are so good. But yeah, I mean, I don't understand how it's always an issue on defense for the Packers. Because, I mean, there are years when our offense has been great. I mean, we've had Aaron Rodgers, and then in the NFC Championship, the defense can't get a hold and can't get a stop when we, need a couple stops. Like it's so frustrating. Obviously, this game loss was a major, step back there, but it was. I mean,
This
Love did
is
have a tough game, but
this is what happens when you allow bad teams to hang around, right? And they didn't put the Giants away. They made some mistakes throughout this game. They didn't put their foot on the throat of the Giants. They allowed the game to stay competitive, and they even needed a late touchdown just to take the lead. And when you allow a team to gain confidence, a young quarterback like Tommy DeVito to gain confidence, then he makes that one big throw. I believe it was to Wan'Dale Robinson on the final drive. Next thing you know, you're in field goal range. So, um, you've said it all along. The Packers, you have no expectations for this team, and this team is young. This team is unproven. They lack an identity really since Aaron Rodgers left, and so they're figuring out who they are. And this is a typical game where a team that doesn't have a strong identity and is still figuring themselves out can lose. If you don't put a team away and you allow a team to gain confidence, they can come up and surprise you. And I thought the Giants played a pretty good game. Better than most people expected. The Giants kind of outplayed the Packers in this game.
yeah, I mean, earlier in this episode, I talked about how the Browns gave up all this money to have Deshaun Watson, and all they needed to do was sign, Joe Flacco off his, from his mom's house watching football.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the Giants played Daniel Jones $160 million to have him replaced by somebody who's better, who lives in his mom's basement in Jersey. Like, not that you and I ever agreed that Daniel Jones was worth $160 million, but how absolutely insane does that have to make the front office in New York feel right now? Like, no, we're going to give this guy all this money. Never mind, let's bench him. He's garbage. Oh, hey, this kid is, undrafted. Let's just sign him from his mom's basement. Like, I mean, I'm glad it's working out for them. Tommy DeVito looks really, really good. I mean, his stat line, he only had 5 misfires in the whole game. Four. He finished 17 for 21, 158 yards, a touchdown. Obviously, Saquon Barkley ran all over the Packers run D and really carried the game. He put up over 100 yards. I mean, Robinson was a great receiver in this game. So, I mean, the Giants had a good game, but the Packers did everything they could to lose it. I mean, Love had the fumble early in the game, and then, the next one, there was the interception. It was a beautiful throw, but the ball was in the air for like 12 minutes. Like, obviously the safety was able to get in there and grab it. Like, I could have left my seat in the stands, run down to the field, and got there to pick that ball by the time it got to the receiver.
I think he got his arm hit. It's hard to tell on replay, but I think that's what happened. Either it got up and the wind knocked it down, or
Well,
I
they did
think
say it was
his arm
super
got hit.
windy. They said it was
Yeah.
a super windy game too. So obviously they were facing that, which, a 45-yard field goal that was missed on a windy night will generally forgive. But when we lose a game by 2 points, that 3-point field goal was pretty fucking important.
Yeah.
So,
It's
tough game for the Packers. We will see.
just
However,
one of those games. Just one of those games where
yeah,
it's like, you know,
yeah.
things don't
And,
go your way, and yeah.
they got a little bit on their high horse. The wind was howling. They said they couldn't hear a lot of there was a lot of static and stuff in their headphones, so they could barely hear like the communication. So, we'll see. One high point, Tucker Kraft, our backup tight end, caught 4
Yep.
balls for 64 yards. Jaden Reed had a kind of off night. I mean, 8 passes, 27 yards. But it's nice to see some of the young talent on the Packers step up. Each game, it's someone different. Like we saw Dontayvion Wicks a couple weeks ago have an amazing breakout game. Tucker Kraft this week as a tight end. I mean, we've been lacking at the tight end position since, I mean, I don't even know how long. It's been a hot second. But I mean, we've got Tucker Kraft now, we have Musgraves. So it's nice to see some of these new talents developing. And again, no expectations, but I would like to see them win next week. So first loss in the month of December for Matt LaFleur. He was 16-0 coming into this week. So, almost had
Yeah,
to come back to keep that stretch going and then fucked it up, but that's all right.
I side note, I think the Giants are playing with some swag. I think that those jerseys and helmets were nasty. Like I love those
Oh, they look so
throwback.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. So they kind of got the spirit of the old school Giants in them. Tommy DeVito played, made the plays when he had to and got it done. Saquon Barkley looked good in this game. Um, and yeah, Green Bay's, just one of those games, and Green Bay is going to have their growing pains. But I agree with you. The rookie class, the weapons they drafted, they picked some nice guys. Jaden Reed, very good. Dontavian Wicks, underrated, can develop into pretty good. Luke Musgrave, good, and Tucker Kraft is filling in nicely as well. So
Yeah. So, I mean, Tommy DeVito has this Giants team in the playoff hunt. So I think you're right that they were, feeling themselves a little bit. They're, I mean, one game out of the final playoff spot in the NFC. So, I mean, 3-game winning streak, DeVito is, doing his thing. So shout out to them. The Giants have been playing way better football with him at the helm. So I'm glad they seem to have found the answer, and we'll just see what happens with the Packers going down the stretch. Um,
Giants might be in that graphic and on the bubble, but they're not in any playoff hunt. They might believe it, but let's be
oh,
realistic about the
technically,
Giants.
technically, they're
Technically,
still
but
scrapping. And I mean, we've seen some NFC contenders have some tough losses this week, so we'll see. I
how
would like to say Aaron Rodgers also lost his 13th game as a starting QB on a game-winning field goal as time expired. So
well.
cyclical reliving history thing again with the two of them. Their starting stats, touchdown numbers, wins, losses, yards, everything is so similar. It's very strange.
That's how sports is, though. That's why I love it. And if you follow the cyclical stuff in sports, you'll find some stuff that's just crazy and damn near eerie. And it's like, to me, that's a little bit of the gut feeling. When you follow the cyclical things in sports, you can kind of have a vision of what can happen in the future too. I mean, it's
Well, like
weird how it works out like that.
was the Denver Buffalo halftime score was like 8-5,
Hmm.
and that had only happened once in history before, like, and it was also the Broncos and the Bills. Like weird stuff.
I mean, it's you know, I called that Jags comeback of the in the Chargers playoff game. Like sometimes you have a gut feeling about some stuff like that. You've
Yeah.
seen it before, and you just the recipe's there.
Well, I know we have, this has been a long episode, guys, but it was some interesting football. I know we have an interview coming up Thursday with Hugh Jackson. We're gonna, touch base with him and see if he's got any interesting updates for us. I think maybe we
Hmm.
should make our picks for Thursday on that one and let him go over it with us instead of continuing past the 2 hour mark on this one.
Yeah, I mean, we can go another 2 hours if you want, or we can call it here.
Let's call it here. We'll pick Thursday's game on the Thursday episode, guys.
Sounds good. I can't wait. I mean, Easton Stick versus Aiden O'Connell. It's going to be a barn burner. But
Oh God.
yeah, great week 14. I mean, we could keep talking forever. This storylines everywhere, and we're getting into to December where there's more and more to talk about, and it's going to be a great end of the season. So stay tuned for that, guys. Yeah, we're going to have interviews. We're going to have Hugh Jackson on, but we got some major stuff in the works as well. So uh, hit that subscribe, follow along. Uh, Good shit as always, Amanda, and we'll do it again on Thursday, huh?
Yeah, we'll
All
be here.
right. Peace out, guys.